Hello and welcome to the Great Lakes Black Authors Expo and Writers Conference. This is the keynote session, and I'm getting ready to bring into the screen our keynote speaker. But before I do, make sure you log on to GreatLakesBlackAuthorsExpo.com and see all the different things that we have as an organization available for authors. And also, if you still need to register to enter into the contest that Cori Sykes has for you, register on the website. You go on the drop down menu and click conference. Don't go into the conference atrium, don't go into the expo, but just click on conference and you still can RSVP for the conference to get entered into the drawing. So I am now bringing to the screen our keynote speaker today, and then I will eventually drop out. But Cori Sykes, owner of Writing Vibe Publishing, also a contributing writer to the Storyteller magazine. She writes the Writing Tips column in there. She is a mom, wife, businesswoman, and a 3 times published author, 2 fiction, 1 short nonfiction, and she has a children's book on the way. I bring to you Cori Sykes, and I'm dipping out now.
Well, thank you, Robin, first of all, for having me on. It's been a long time since I spoke, but I'm really happy to be here, especially talking about everything that I love. And so I'm very appreciative to you. All right. We'll go ahead and get started. I wanted to talk to you today a little bit about just kind of living in your voice, which was actually talked about earlier in the conference today. Give you some writing tips and some publishing tips and also some marketing tips. So let's go. Next slide, please. Okay. So how did you get here? Like, have you ever truly sat back and asked yourself, like, how did I get here? I know I have, and it's usually when I'm like evaluating my life decisions that led me to a place where I didn't feel that I should be. That could have been when, like, after I was waking up with a headache after listening to my younger sister tell me that the drink isn't that strong. And side note, if you know my sister, the drink is always that strong. Or it could have also been like while I'm receiving an award at work for 10 years of service. And I know in my heart that like writing is where I need to be. So again, I ask, how did you get here? Like, do you know? And do you even know where here is? Here is not this conference. It's not this day, Saturday, February 27th. It's not your living room, your office, basement, or wherever you're watching this from. Here is you. How did you get here to be the person that you are, to be a writer, to be an aspiring writer, to be like in the writing community, to wearing the clothes that you wear, to acting the way that you did or the way that you do? How did you get here? And even when you sit back and ask yourself that question, it's really not easy to answer. It's really hard. Asking yourself how you got here should evoke happiness. Sometimes it evokes anger and triggers all the emotions. Like I watch Grey's Anatomy and they say giving you all the feels. So when you ask yourself how you got here, you should get all the feels. There's not a one size fits all answer to that question. And there's not even a one event leads to all answer to that question. Everything that's happened in your life, good, bad, ugly, has led you to this moment, this year, this you. Next slide, please. Okay. On a surface level, I can tell you how I got here. I was always a daydreamer. And as a kid, that's how I started writing. I was a daydreamer. Or I could dig deeper and tell you that like my childhood was very traumatic. As great of a stepfather as great of a man as my stepfather was, he had a really bad drug addiction. And he stole like my little allowances. He hid and did drugs in the house, like while my mom was gone. And like to get me and my sister away, my mom often sent us to my grandparents' house in Indiana. It could have also been like, because my sister was like bad as hell. It could have also been because I was always coming up with like some idea that often got like my sister hurt. Um, I was a daydreamer. I had to have some way to reenact my daydreams. Um, but anyway, one day while at my grandma's house, she called my name. I was laying on the floor right in front of her. I didn't hear her, and she didn't get mad, thankfully. She just kind of chuckled and she's like, that girl's got her head in the clouds again. And she was right. I was daydreaming. I'd learned to daydream to escape my environment. So daydreaming naturally progressed into writing. And dare I say, without my traumatic childhood, I might not be a writer. Yeah, it's truly possible because it is part of my story. Next slide. So again, I ask, how did you get here? The piece about me that I just shared, while it's eventful, it's really a small piece of my story. It's a small piece of how I am processing how I became a writer and a publisher. Next slide. To know and accept your story is to know and accept you and who you are. As a writer, you can't spend your time plotting other people's stories without actually plotting your own. It's got to be a good balance. We were all given a unique story, AKA our lives, and making sense of our story allows us to make sense of our voice. When we make sense of our lives and live in our voice, we can then live in our unique writing style. It determines what we write about, who we write about, and who we are writing to. You cannot write in someone else's voice like the other books that you've read. You have to write in your own. If you're trying to write in someone else's voice, your story won't flourish and it won't even really connect to your readers. That's why you need to know how you got here. Next slide, please. Again, if you don't know, that's okay. I was having a conversation with my husband, and he said something that really connected with what I had been working on for this conference. And he said, some Blacks are trying to discover their own identity in America, while America is having its own identity crisis. So how can you find your own voice in America while America can't even find its own voice, or they can't even like accept like what led to everything here? So as we discover who we are, it's easy to see like who, what, when, where, how, why our identity crisis began. But it can be hard to figure out how that identity crisis made us who we are. This is 2021, though. We are experiencing an awakening of sorts. We have been enlightened. Next slide, please. Okay. Many of you may not know, or maybe you've forgotten, or you just like, I don't know, but Black people received superpowers on December 21st, 2020. If you do not believe me, go to Twitter and search these hashtags: Black superpowers, December 21st, Black solstice, even Negro solstice. Black Twitter will verify my claim, and I promise you will also be entertained by this whole situation. And I make fun of it, but like it's time for us to live in our superpowers. It is our time. It is time to discover our identity. It is time to know your story. It is time to accept your story. It is time to write your story. We need to use our superpowers just like our ancestors did when even they weren't even allowed to use their superpowers. Next slide, please. So we have to do our part, as I said before. Phyllis Wheatley, I hope she is on your left because she is on my left right now. But anyway, she's in the pink box. She did her part She was only 7 or 8 years old when she was taken from Africa in 1761. Yet on September 1st, 1773, she became the first African American to publish a book. Bonus points because she was also a female, female power. So, anyway, her book was titled Poems on Various Subjects, Religious and Moral. Toni Morrison in the White Box. And also, if you didn't know, she's from Lorraine. She did move to New York, but she is born and bred in Lorraine. So another shout out to Northeast Ohio. She did her writing part by publishing great works of art. And she's also in here because in my mind, we're like homies. She's just amazing. So Phyllis and Toni both used their superpowers. Toni was known for works of art like Sula, The Bluest Eye, Beloved, Song of Solomon, and others. But I'm not sure if you know that she was also an editor at Random House, which is one of the big 5 publishing companies. So as an editor for Random House, she also brought in other Black people, whereas a lot of publishing companies were not doing that. She was behind the works of great people like Angela Davis, Gail Jones, Lucille Clifton, and even Muhammad Ali. Doing your part and figuring out your role doesn't mean that you have to be like a best-selling author. It just means that you need to walk in your superpower, whatever that means to you. If you write, then write. If you edit, then edit. If you design book covers, design the book covers. The world needs your superpower. My superpower is storytelling. I can tell anybody a story, and I can tell anybody's story. Next slide. Okay. Last year, I opened Write and Vibe Publishing after really kind of like fumbling through COVID. In my eyes, the publishing feature was always something that I would do down the road. But everything works at its own time, and publishing came to the forefront. But here I am. And in October of last year, I published a first book for somebody. Valencia Joy is the author. The title of the book is I Met a Guy. So if you haven't picked it up, go ahead, pick it up. It's available everywhere. Amazon, Walmart, Barnes and Noble, I don't think half price books because there's a whole different type of process there. But just go online, pick it up, or you can go to my website. But anyway, as I was saying, while publishing that book really kind of felt like work. It was such a beautiful thing. It was just beautiful. I can't even like explain the look of an author's face when they see their book like in their hand and they get to hold it. I also established a writers group, and I don't know, somehow when I downloaded my presentation, some words got cut off. So in the pink box on the screen, it actually says Writing Warriors. So I established that and launched that just earlier this month, and it is going really well. It's a private community where we write, we learn, and we talk about writing. I promise it's like the most writer thing you could ever do, but everybody in there is writing. And I love to brag because we had a goal. I set a goal just kind of one day. I was like, oh my goodness, it would be great to write 20,000 words as a group. And I was just like, hey guys, are you up to this? Like, you think we could do it? And they all said yes. And I just got to tell you, we like obliterated that goal. We wrote way over 20,000 words. It was glorious. Superpowers were glowing like water reflections. I mean, just we were in there. Like, I don't know. I think it's in there like swimwear. But anyway, next slide. Okay. So if you're ready to activate your superpower, hashtag Black Solstice, then let's go. My only tip for you, I have one tip. Go write. That's it. So now I'd like to thank you for your time attending this presentation. And of course, I'm just kidding. I wouldn't do you all like that, just giving you all like one tip. That's ridiculous. Plus, y'all might punch me in the face when you see me in these streets. And as the kids say, I don't want that smoke. I can't be out here in a wheelchair after like throwing my back out trying to defend myself. I just don't want those kinds of problems. Next slide. So anyway, I have my top 3 tips for writing, publishing, and marketing as a writer. So if you're a writer, these tips will apply to you. They will help you activate your superpower. Next slide. So for writing, the first thing you need to do is kind of figure out how you write. Typically, you'll fit into one of these 2 groups. So there is a pantser, which means like you write at the seat of your pants. There's no outlining. You just go with it and you go with where the story takes you. Or you will be a plotter. You will plan out your book. You will outline whatever you're working on, and then you will write to those points. I'm a pantser. I have like these scenes that just play in my head like movies. So when I get a scene, I'll just keep perfecting it in my head. And once it's perfected, then I write it down. And that is the beginning of my story. So that means I will either go, as I'm writing, I'll go forwards in the story, or I'll go backwards in the story. And I'll just keep going until the book is done. My husband is a plotter. He said that he writes his, like say he's writing like an article or something. He'll write down like 3 points that he wants to cover during that article. And then he'll write to each of those points. So it's very similar to like outlining in any other type of book. So say you're writing like nonfiction, not a memoir, but like a self-help, you would probably need to approach that as a plotter to make sure that you are covering everything that you need to cover, and that will help people as you write through that book. There is a really small group of people who fit into both of those groups. Honestly, I have not met one yet, but I do know they exist. The second point, when do you write? So figuring out when writing flows more freely for you will be to your benefit. So do you write in the morning, the afternoon, or the evening? And it can change over your life. Mine actually changes during the seasons. So because it's cold outside here, my best writing time is in the afternoons. I used to be like an evening, late night writer. But now the way life is set up, I just be tired. And so my brain does not work in the evening. In the summers, I love to go for an early morning walk, and then I come back and have my coffee and write. And I do this before my daughters wake up. There's just something like really glorious about starting your day like that, at least for me. Let me see. Next slide. Yeah. Okay. No, we're not. We still have one more point to cover. How long to write? That's the third point that I wanted to cover. You need to know like how long your brain can focus on one thing. So some people, it's like they can write all day, and that's good for them. After I write probably for about 45 minutes, I just start looking at the screen and I don't even know like where to take it. Probably because I don't plan everything out. And so I just write by scene. But you need to also know like how much writing can you squeeze within one day. I promise all you really need is 5 minutes a day. And you will see that as you work through those 5 minutes, you'll start to see that it gets easier to write. The words just flow because you're building up like that creative part in your brain. And it helps you just kind of really keep moving. And 5 minutes a day really will help get your word count up. And honestly, I did learn that the brain actually has trouble focusing on one task after 60 minutes of use. So get up, stretch your legs, roll your shoulders, your arms, your neck, and then come back to your task. Okay. Now we can move on to the next slide. And I want to go back to Toni Morrison really quick because I watched a documentary on Hulu. It was called The Pieces I Am. But to summarize it, in it, she said, I always get up early. I want to beat the sun. About 3 or 4 hours, I'll work every morning. Because I got to get up early because I had small children. And if I got up at 5 o'clock before they woke, I could do some work. So Toni, my buddy, she was working like 3 to 4 hours in writing. That's how she was able to get all her novels out and to also work behind the scenes with others. It's really just about dedication. Everyone has the time to write. You just have to find the time that works best for you and then use that time. Next slide. Okay, here are my publishing tips. One, know your budget. Publishing comes in a wide range of packages and prices and what they will offer you. Do your research and also know like what you're willing to spend in order to publish your product and get it out there. The second one, know your options. There are 3 basic options in publishing, or 3 different routes. There's the self-publishing where you do it all by yourself. You're in charge of everything. The second one is hybrid publishing, which is what Write and Vibe is. It's kind of like in the middle between self and traditional publishing. You pay upfront, but then you also receive royalties at the end. And then the publishing company does everything on your behalf while working with you. Traditional publishing, you do not have to pay upfront, but to get into traditional publishing, you usually need to have like this huge following or be a celebrity or know someone who knows someone who knows someone, and then you can get in there. They do give you royalties that are kind of low, in my opinion, but you don't have to spend any money. And also, when you do traditional publishing, the timeline can be about 3 years. Self-publishing, you could do it a little bit faster. Hybrid is going to be somewhere in the middle because it is a mixture of the two. And I just have one more point to that. So your timeline, when you think about your timeline, just realize that there's so much that goes into a good book. The editing, revising, cover design, you have to secure your ISBNs and barcodes. You have to research the appropriate genre for your title, because that matters. Like, where is your book going to be in the bookstore? All books are put by the same genre for the most part. So you need to know where your book will go. And then you have to wait on the test copy to come in the mail. You have to initiate distribution and then wait for the stores to update their records. It's a lot. Saying that you want to, after you finish writing, you want to put something out immediately, I do not recommend it. Next slide. Okay, and these are the marketing tips, and they're not the like traditional marketing tips that you would see, but they will help make sure that your book stands out in your genre. So the first tip, read in your genre. You need to know as a writer what the competition is and what the readers are flocking to. It's always good to say, I want to be different. Yeah, that's fine. But if the readers aren't accustomed to different, it will throw them off and they may or may not like it. It's a huge bargain to take. The second one, splurge on your cover. When a reader picks up a book, the cover is the very first thing that they see. If it looks unprofessional or the coloring is off, again, you'll throw off your reader, in which you can lose sales. The third one, decipher your audience. Make sure your audience is actually interested in what you're writing. So if my audience is like, I don't know, 25-year-old Black women, I'm not going to write a book about plumbing. It won't hit, it'll be off. So just make sure that you know who your audience is. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, in 2021, we have a lot of work to do regarding writing. You might have your family that's home a lot. You might have your own insecurities, time, lack of support. COVID is still here. You might be mentally exhausted and not living in your voice. And let's not forget about racism. Systemic racism and blatant racism is still very prevalent in the big publishing industry. It's still very whitewashed, and currently they're like trying to figure out ways to overcome it, and so they're working on it. But the journey is really ours to walk. Don't overlook your story, your voice, or your superpower. Fiction or nonfiction, poetry or screenwriting or songwriting or blogging, your story does mean something to someone. You need to discover your voice, and you need to know how you got here, and then you need to write. And even if you're not a writer, but you're here at this conference or watching this somewhere, you still have a very important job to do to uplift Black writers and their works of art. You need to buy their work. You need to talk about their work. You need to share their work, praise their work, promote their work, support their work. It's truly up to us. Next slide. Okay, I promised that I would do a giveaway for those that attended my keynote speech. Here it is. If you go to writeandvibe.com/publishing-giveaway, you can enter a contest to win a $600 off, or what I think, I can't even remember what I did, but basically you get the basic publishing package for only $600. It is a huge discount. But if you go there, you'll see a button to enter. You just have to fill out this Google form so that I could know who actually entered the contest. And then I'll choose a winner, or by random. I think there's like this Excel spreadsheet that does like some random stuff. And someone will be notified and they'll be able to do this. To enter, you either need to have a finished manuscript or be getting ready to finish it within the next 6 months, because as a publisher, I can't publish something that is not complete. So 6 months is plenty of time to finish your manuscript if you're not yet complete. So next slide. Okay, here is my details. I just really want to thank you all for stopping in and listening to this keynote. These are the ways that you can contact me and just kind of follow Write and Vibe, the website, writeandvibe.com. We currently have a shop that allows you to get into the Writing Warriors group that I mentioned. And we also have just a few shirts on there as well. You can follow us on IG and Facebook at Write and Vibe. So if it's on Facebook, it's going to be facebook.com/Write and Vibe. Again, the Writing Warriors, you can find a link to that in shop Write and Vibe .square.site. I want to thank you all. And thank you, Robin, as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much for, I'm going to go back.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on, let me go back to the screen and bring up that code so people can get that down.
Mm-hmm.
So they can enter the contest. Bring that back up. 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
And which screen I could do? Or this one. This one. Okay, I want you on the screen. But okay, so I'm gonna pull that up there. And thank you for your presentation. You gave a lot of nuggets. I'm gonna say there's a lot of people out here with businesses
Mm-hmm.
that say they will publish you, that do not have the nuggets that you just gave today. And I've been published twice.
Mm-hmm.
I went through a publisher who then decided to start a ministry. And she, even though I'm supposedly still in contract with for a couple more books, but I haven't written them, so I haven't been able to call on the carpet about my money. So, yeah. But yeah, all that stuff as far as the tips and the marketing and all, none of that came with her publishing. It was book design, uploaded to Amazon and Barnes and Noble, and that was it. Her job was done. And so, only time I really market my books, because I always forget to do it at my own conference. But is when I go speak somewhere. That's the only time I get to market my books.
Mm-hmm.
So I thank you for that information. If there's any questions, before we wrap up, I'm going to check over on the YouTube page. I had a couple comments over there.
Okay. Yeah, with
Carmen Hall said,
marketing, it's like it's an ongoing thing. If you write, and this is something I had to learn too. If you write something, marketing does not stop like a month after your book. It's ongoing. It's forever, as long as you're wanting to sell it, because you got to remember, wherever you're selling it, you're probably going to get some type of royalty check. So even if that check is like $1, that's $1 that you did not have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And trust me, Amazon's going to send you your little tax form. Even if you sold one book, they're going to send you a tax form at the end of the year. Yeah. Carmen says you're doing a great job, and she identified as a pantser.
Okay.
And Denise Harrison from the first session, she commented, she says she knows a couple of budding writers that she's going to be sharing your website with.
Oh,
so
awesome.
that is awesome.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to check over again on the Facebook page if there's no questions.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I do thank you so much. Make sure you're subscribing to the Storyteller magazine to get the print copies, or check online and read it for free. Cori is writing tips every issue. It's a quarterly magazine.
Yes.
Free tips from her in the magazine, but I also encourage you to join the tribe, her tribe.
Yes.
So you can really learn this writing thing. Everyone wants to write a book.
Mm-hmm.
But there's techniques to it, there's skills to it, there's ways of, character development, all of that stuff, especially if you're in a fiction, that you really have to pay attention to it and for it to make sense and to flow. Mm-hmm. So it's good to be in a community, find your tribe to help you develop what you have going.
Absolutely.
Thank you again, Cori. We're going to break now and get ready for our second panel at 1:00. So it gives me a little time to grab me some food. At 1:00, where we will be discussing literacy and incarceration, and illiteracy and incarceration, the correlation there, and how reading frees the mind. And we have a couple gentlemen who had experienced incarceration, who are going to share their stories and share how reading has helped them in obtaining freedom of mind, because freedom of mind has to happen in order for there to be freedom of physicality.
Absolutely.
So, make sure you're back here at 1:00 to tune in for that session. And then at 3:00, we have an open mic poetry session happening here on Great Lakes Black Authors. So I look forward to seeing you in the future sessions. Thank you again, Cori. Hopefully people get in touch with you. And then as far as the drawing for the 1 year of Write and Vibe, you will be in touch with them with that as well. So if you have not registered on the Great Lakes Black Author website, please go there and register under the conference tab so that you can be entered into that drawing.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much, Cori. Blessings
to
you. I love that you gave me your time, and I pray that everything flourishes on your end now.
All right. Thank you. I pray the same for you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.